Hi, we're Nia and Marianne from Seren Health Coaching. We are metabolic health coaches who are passionate about good metabolic health for everyone. We also love to chat about all things health and to share as much information as we can with people who want to make changes to their lifestyle but aren't quite sure where to start. We're going to release a new episode every Friday where we talk about a different aspect of health. So do subscribe and let us know what you think. We'd also love to know what you're interested in too. So if there's something that you'd like us to have a chat about, do send us a message and we'll do our best to cover it soon.
Hi, Nia.
Hello, Marianne. How are you?
How are you? I'm fine. And talking about today how the environment you find yourself in will either work in your favor or not when it comes to designing a healthy lifestyle.
Okay.
And we've touched on this before. And of course, it's incredibly obvious, isn't it, that your environment is incredibly important.
Mm,
But of
mm.
course, you can't always choose your environment, and that's sort of the point. So
Yeah.
um, what I thought was we'd have a bit of fun and look at what we've done with our own environments and how we've modified things, and maybe how we set out to change things originally and how we've changed our minds a bit about
Mm.
what the really important things are. So,
Yeah, so we can't just all give up our jobs and
yeah,
responsibilities and move to a remote Greek island and live in a
yep,
small community, can we, and
yep,
grow our own food? Although sometimes I feel very much
you're tempted.
like I would like to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're right. Yes, we've made lots of adaptations to our own
Yeah,
lives, and I think the interesting thing is that you and I both actually have very different environments, don't we,
we
and different
do.
pressures.
Almost
Um,
polar opposites
yeah,
within the country we live in anyway. I mean, there are
yeah,
lots of obviously different places around the world, but we both
yeah,
live on one continent, but in
and we
incredibly different ways.
yeah, and we both really do live in the same. I mean, we don't live in the same place, obviously, but we live in the
No.
same area, really,
Yes,
in
we
the south
do.
of England, which is
Yeah.
incredibly affluent. Not
Yeah.
saying that we are incredibly affluent. I'm just saying the
No,
area
but
we live in is
we
affluent.
live in a
Um,
privileged place.
and a privileged
Yeah.
society. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. And I suppose what I'm trying to illustrate is that there is no blueprint out there
Mm,
which for making that healthy lifestyle, and you're going to have to find one that suits you and your circumstances.
yes.
Remember my intense fascination with those blue zones.
Mhm.
I'm still fairly fascinated. You know, those places around the world where people lived longer and better. They really
Mm,
fascinated me. And it was all about the environment,
yeah.
really. We didn't really know that at first, but that is exactly what it was about. And the
Mm.
environment worked in their favor in terms of health and longevity. And it was a great illustration of just how important that environment is when you're talking about health.
Yeah, so Dan Buettner, wasn't it? He was
Yeah.
the researcher who looked at all these places, he mapped them
Yeah.
all out, he searched for the common denominators to explain why they were all living so much longer. And I think initially it was with the intention that we would all follow suit and live in exactly the same
Yeah,
way as
where's the
them.
recipe? And I think originally the research was all about longevity, but it's sort of turned into quality of life as well, which is obviously much more interesting. I mean,
Yeah,
the number of years is one thing, but how you live them is completely
it's
another.
better. Yeah.
And wouldn't that be such a neat plan to copy? I thought at the time. Let me
Mm.
see exactly what they're eating so I can devise something similar. And wouldn't it be great if you could all eat mountains of, I don't know, Bulgarian yogurt with honey made in some Greek island and olives from Sardinia? I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
sounds dead easy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then you've got to walk up your hills with your goats. The
Oh,
hills are
yes.
alive with your goats, and you live with your extended family, which may or may not be a
Oh,
good thing depending on your
yes.
family.
Yes.
And then you do tai chi in the village square every morning, which
Yeah.
always actually has looked like quite a good fun. I'd quite like to.
After your little cup of green tea.
Oh, of
Yeah,
course.
I
Yeah.
sort of ignored some of that, quite a bit about the goats and the hills. And I was at the time very hooked on diet. I mean, that was,
Mm,
I
mm.
suppose diet brought me to the whole interest in terms of prevention and
Yeah.
health in the first place. I was, my background as a diabetic nurse was very much
What you put in.
and what it did to your blood sugar. So I could be maybe excused slightly for that. But
Yeah, yeah. You were really
okay,
fascinated by it, but I think rightly so because
yeah,
it was interesting that they were eating differently and why,
mm,
why was that making them live longer and better?
yeah,
It's really interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've always been interested in shortcuts, of course. So
Yeah.
I've always thought, you know what, if someone else is doing this great research and it's going to give us this lovely little map, I
Then
mean,
why
I
don't
don't have to
we
think about any of this. I'm just going to follow what he says people do in the blue zones. Seemed
Yeah.
really simple to me.
It did seem simple. So, but the issue or the thing that was interesting was that all these places were in totally different parts of the world,
Yes.
but they were all, they were all a blue zone. So, what was the factor about? What was it about their environment that was making this better for them?
Yes, and that's where we sort of came to. And in my favor, I did get more interested in the quality of life rather than longevity.
Mm,
Although the research was funded originally by the National Geographic Association, and it very much started with how long people lived in various areas and why they lived longer.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but it turned out, more importantly, that they were living better because it doesn't always go together.
No,
Um,
it does. Long life
and
isn't
certainly
necessarily good
in our
quality.
culture, it doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily go together. But
and actually,
in
I think that's worth
yeah,
really repeating because
yeah,
actually I was talking the other day to somebody and I was saying, what are you saving for? And
yeah,
saving
yeah,
for my care home. And I was like, well, no, you don't
yeah,
want
could
to live longer just to live in an institution.
yes,
You need to be
yes.
you want to live longer
It's
to
a
live
very
well.
good point. I'm sort of hoping not to need the care home bit because I'm going to spend it soon. So
Yeah,
anyway, yes. So that's why
absolutely.
I'm doing the sort of things I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to go. We've talked about the blue zones before. We're not going to give you a repeat of that. So we're
No.
going to go back to the beginning, which is what were the things that we learnt about environments that are key to healthy living? And then how did we use that to redesign our own environments and to add, even more value to we acknowledge the privileged life that we already have. And I mean, we're
Yeah.
not privileged in the terms of what many people would say is privileged, but we are privileged in our
Oh,
knowledge and in our
definitely.
approach to
Yeah.
health, I think. Yeah.
And even in all sorts of ways we're privileged. And yes, we will not forget that. But we can to an extent choose what we eat and how we live. And
Mm,
lots of people can't. So, this is not it's not about some people just have to survive. And
absolutely. Yeah.
that's very different. So we are in a privileged position. Um, it doesn't mean we always chose well, and I suppose that's the point. So
Mm,
many years ago, if we go back, um, we were still making choices that we probably wouldn't make today, and
yeah.
that's
Oh, definitely.
partly to do with that environment that we found ourselves in.
Mm,
And both of us had some issues with weight management,
hmm.
and I'd also developed autoimmune conditions, which I now know were probably triggered by the way I was living. So,
Mm.
we did have to rethink slightly.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we did very differently, which kind of links with this, is that we didn't go away and accept the status quo and just go and
No.
follow any old slimming plan. We did just look at them quite critically and go, nope, don't believe that. Don't see the evidence for that. We're going to change the way we almost used ourselves as guinea pigs to
Yeah.
say, that doesn't sit right with me. Let me try this thing that does sit better and see how I get on. And it turned out it was
Yeah.
useful.
Otherwise, we might still be in that queue for the slimming club that we used to go to, you know,
Indeed.
on an annual basis. I remember standing in the queue thinking, golly, everyone just has to return to this
Yeah.
continually. This is obviously how it works. Till
Yeah.
eventually I started to think, sure, I could
Perhaps
do
not.
better.
Yeah.
And it
We
wasn't
are the example of why curiosity is a good thing, I think.
exactly. I think we both are quite irritatingly curious. And I was writing this podcast and thinking about the things we changed in both our own lives, and there are quite a few parallels. But I
Mm,
realized the real common denominator for both of us, and probably the most important bit, was that we acknowledged that stress in the workplace affected our health
Yeah.
adversely,
Yeah.
and that this also affected our family lives and was probably, in the end, the most important change for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I suspect originally, if you'd asked me, I would have said I'd changed my diet, which
Mhm.
I did, that I exercise more, which I do,
Mm.
that we prioritize sleep, which we do, and
Mm.
that we've developed healthy habits around all these things, which is fundamental to making sustainable change. So, all of that, in our favor. But the thing that counted most for both of us was that we addressed our life stresses. And
Mm.
in many ways, this was the real issue for both of us. It affected us in all those other things were
Mm.
part of
Mm.
this thing that
Yeah.
if you don't get to the real source of why you are struggling to make healthy changes in your life, I suspect that unless you get to that nub, and we were just lucky that we did, that the other things don't last if you're not careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can't all
Absolutely.
go around, changing our whole lives and giving up our jobs and living on an island somewhere off Wales, although I'd still like to do that. I'd
Yeah,
like
me
to
too.
live on a narrow boat and a few other things. But we can't all do all of that.
No,
But
no, we can't. But and stress may not be the main issue. And I think maybe the other thing that we should acknowledge is that we both worked in a highly pressured workplace
yes,
environment in health, which is ironic considering.
yes,
But
this is true.
my one of my very first jobs, I was told you don't get a lunch break. I mean,
Yeah,
and that's
great.
just
I mean,
insane.
yes,
I mean, I'm there
insane.
for 10 hours. Well, I can't live on thin air.
Yes,
It's all of
yeah.
these kind of things. So,
Oh, absolutely.
health is probably one of the worst professions to work in if you
Yes,
want a
but we
decent
didn't know
break.
that really, did we? We didn't. We felt omnipotent at that point. I think that's the thing about health professionals. They don't really feel like these things really,
Apply to them.
pertain to them. And
Mm,
I worked
mm.
on intensive care units. There weren't many lunch breaks there either, depending
No.
on the clientele.
I used to
So,
hide in the well, I don't care now. No one's going to be listening to this. I used to hide. So in the dispensary, there's like bookshelves that are on wheels, and they go
oh yes, those
you
ones,
slide
yeah,
in and out.
squash
So
you.
if
Yeah.
if you're careful, you can hide
Oh
inside
golly,
the bookshelves
really?
of
Just to get
medicines
away?
just to quickly eat an apple and a handful of nuts.
Yeah, I
And then
mean.
somebody will inevitably come in and say, "Oh, somebody wants to talk to the
See the
pharmacist." And you're like, "Yeah,
pharmacist, yeah.
just 2 minutes, please."
Oh, I know. I
So
did always feel
so yeah.
very sorry for the pharmacists I work with, I have to say, if that means anything,
Oh, that's very
because,
kind of you.
they
Thank you.
did seem to be really overworked.
There's a lot going on.
So, yeah,
But okay, yes. So it's really worth, I think, going back to basics and thinking about the kind of life
yeah,
that you want to have and the stresses that you've got and the diet that you're having or the food that you're having,
yeah,
the activity you're doing and what you're doing about your sleep as well. And that's obviously what we do in our Kickstart program, but this
yeah.
is different. This is about what we did ourselves. So how did it really work for you to begin with?
Yeah, so I was incredibly lucky, but I didn't know that then. But I changed my responsibilities at work, and eventually I realized, that I had to do something because I was completely devoid in sort of emotional and all sorts of energy. So I
Mm,
started to choose only to do the work that I really love doing.
hmm
And then I had the ultimate chance to redesign, and I retired from
mm,
my job in the health service, and I moved to a house in the forest and started remote working in things that interested me. So areas of passionate interest, how with no pressure,
mm.
um, and no pressure to make a living either. And I sort of started the slow life, if you like, and it happened to be lockdown.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, this was the ultimate privilege, and not many people get this.
Mm,
Um, and I also learned how much things like diet mattered, and eventually, how much I needed to do some structured exercise.
yeah,
I
that
acquired
took
a
a little bit of
dog.
time, didn't it?
Yes, it did take a long time. I hate to be reminded. Um, I got a dog and I walked more and I started playing tennis, which I really enjoyed. I
Mhm.
also acquired this rowing machine, which is all set up across the corridor, and I stumble every morning onto it from my
Mhm.
bed, and I do this very fast kilometer, and then I do strength training exercise for 10 minutes. And I do this consistently every day, which is completely amazing for me. And this has
Mm.
been built into my life with the use of the whole science of habits, I suppose. And
Yeah.
if I can do it, I promise you, anyone can. I'm the least likely person ever to have got to this.
Mm.
Um, so I walk and meditate in the forest every morning. I mean, that's another little sort of add on because it's just here in my
Mm.
environment.
Mm.
And to be fair, the dog forces me out the door because there's quite a lot of mornings when I'd rather not go up the
Yeah.
steep slope behind. I shop at the local market. Aren't I lucky? There's a local market. It's really good. I've added more plants to my diet. I know there are various trigger foods for me now, and I
Mm.
just don't keep them in my house. And I don't feel guilty about that. I treat foods are not to be kept in my vicinity and they for treats. I have more time to follow my interests, family and friends. I know I'm really, really lucky to be able to design my own incredibly, almost like my own blue zone.
Mm. Mm.
And I know your life is really different to mine. So you're at a really different bit of life.
Stage of life. Yeah.
Yeah. And you live in a different environment completely. So
Mm.
how have you tweaked your own life?
Well, firstly, I think it was changing my job,
Yeah.
which was the biggest thing for me. And to be blunt, I
Yeah.
had to. I just
Yeah.
wasn't able to continue in that role.
Yeah.
I
Really.
I would have
Yeah.
gone mad.
Yeah.
So that was a good thing, really.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everybody can afford to
No.
to do that. It didn't come without a penalty,
No.
obviously,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's a penalty that I chose to take, and I'm
Yeah.
so glad that I did
Yeah.
because it enables me to have the relationship with my children that I want to have
Yeah.
and be the working mum, but be the mum that is there to walk them to school and
Yeah.
to walk them home,
So you've
to
got
take them to their
flexible
clubs.
working
Yeah,
life.
and
Yeah.
and to be fair, I mean, let's be honest, COVID has obviously
Yeah.
done a great service in terms of
Yeah,
being
of
able to
course.
work from home and remotely. So
Yeah.
that's been really great for me. And I've
Yeah.
never been the kind of person that needs to be in an office to be motivated to work. And the fact is, I'm talking to people all day long anyway, so it's not,
Yeah, you don't miss
the
the work
camaraderie of that.
environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always got you on the end of the phone, and I have my cats as well, so, I'm
Yes.
someone's always talking
You're
to
not
me.
lonely. No.
I'm not lonely.
No.
Yeah. And then after I had my second child, it was really about getting
Mm.
back to feeling like me and having the energy that I wanted to be able to bring up the children. So that's when I went on my more of a discovery,
Yeah.
losing weight,
Yeah.
adding some, as you say, structured
Exercise.
exercise.
Yeah.
Very importantly, doing resistant exercise for me, which really kind of made so much more sense. I wasn't the greatest PE enthusiast at school, but I finally found something that I enjoyed. And I 100% believe that if you don't enjoy it, you won't do it. So
No, not
I
long
really
term
don't
you won't.
care how you move your body, just do something that you enjoy, and that's going to work.
Or add a reward.
Or
There's
and add a
that's
reward.
the
Yeah,
other way.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And all of it really, yes, I've been incredibly fortunate to be able to do that. And I do have, I suppose, my mother calls it willpower, and it isn't willpower because we know that we haven't, but I do
We're
have
talking
quite a
about that soon.
determined
Yeah.
doggedness
Yes.
about me in terms of I am, if I'm committed to something, I am all in.
Yeah.
So,
But
that's
maybe
where
also
it
you
came from.
found a way to live that gives you lots of good things. So then you're willing to make those changes. So
Mm,
it's,
mm.
there is also a reward system in here. You know exactly why you're doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and and the rewards are enough to keep you going. But you've had to give up other things. So it's
Yeah,
not
and I think that's
all
that's the thing, isn't it? There is always going to be a sacrifice or a
yeah,
payoff or a balance you've got to strike, and it will be different for everybody. And that's why almost it's so important to design your own environment because you are the
absolutely.
one who is willing to make those sacrifices, and only
Exactly.
you know what you're willing to cut. Actually, it's not for me to come in and tell you, I think you should do this. It's got to work for you.
If we had an opinion about the fact that we think you shouldn't work in the health service or whatever it is, it's not really the point.
Mm-mm.
And this
No.
isn't all about us, but more to illustrate that it's worth really taking stock of where you are, what
Mm.
choices you have, rather than just jumping into the next wonder plan that's going to change everything for you. And
You sent me one of those, didn't you, the other day?
I
I
do.
still haven't worked out what that is.
I
You sent
send
me
them from
something,
time to time.
and it just said, "You don't have to change anything, you just have to think differently," and I thought, I just don't
I
understand
think
how
it
that
was some
works.
neuro programming thing. I
Oh,
mean, yeah, I just think there's so much online, isn't there, that
how much do you have
tells
to pay for
you,
neuro
well, probably a
programming?
huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Whereas our little Kickstart course, which
It's
we've
only 40
designed,
quid.
will do some of this work with you. So, it'll start you off on that of
The
finding
journey.
what's
Yeah.
really important to you.
I
And
think
yeah,
that's really key. Stop listening to everybody who has an opinion about your life and
yes.
work out what's really
What's
important to
yours?
you. Yeah.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
let's manage your expectations and not expect, a
Yeah.
3 stone weight loss in 2 weeks. That's just
Yeah, all
ridiculous.
that. Yeah.
And make the really small changes that become the habits that stick. And
Yeah.
then that's your life. That's the life that you live. And that's the healthy life that you live. So,
Yeah.
thereafter, all good.
And you'll have designed it and not us. But our
Mm,
program will really help you. Ultimately, I was thinking about, the health of the nation, and there's a lot of talk at the moment. Um,
yes. Yeah.
Not only here, but in different parts of the
Might
world.
write to Keir Starmer actually, just to get a few
But
things
in
off my
order
chest.
to make us healthy as a nation, I was just watching the news before I came on here, and there's
Mm,
something tonight on the news about the fact that healthier food's getting more expensive.
mm,
And this is the sort of thing that is so frustrating
for
if you're trying to
everyone.
help people
Yeah.
be healthier, because they were looking at the percentage of your income you had to spend on food to have a healthy diet, and it was, as you earned less, the percentage is so much
Goes
more.
up.
Yeah,
Mm,
it's something like people with children on low incomes. It's something like 75% of their income would have to be
golly.
spent just to get the minimum what we would decide is a
Mm.
healthy diet in terms of fresh fruit and vegetables and stuff.
And then,
So
as we know at the moment, everything else costs so much more anyway. Your rent, your mortgage,
exactly.
all the rest of it. So that's
So I was
ridiculous.
thinking, in terms of, if you're looking at health of a nation sort of stuff, governments really will need to get involved in
Mm,
making changes that make healthier choices easier when we're talking about health environment. So, for example, making fruit and vegetables and healthy staples cheaper, opening
mm,
leisure centres to more people, more cycle routes and schemes, building outside gyms, subsidising community projects to get people moving and enjoying more connectedness in communities, less cars
mm,
in cities. Some of these things are beginning to happen. Making public transport cheap, I get so mad about that. If you
mm.
want to stop people, driving cars and polluting our cities, you've got to give them cheap public transport. Seems
Yeah,
really
you've got to give
easy
them
to me.
options. Yeah,
But some
yeah.
of it is happening, but we really need to accelerate it if we're going to save our health and social care system.
Yeah. I think, we had a little while during COVID where we thought about that, where we
Yeah,
we taught we learnt more. I was listening to a podcast the other day and there was a doctor on there saying, there was a time when we all
yeah,
used to go into work with stinking colds and not really care about
yeah,
passing it
we
on, but
don't
at
now.
least we kind of think twice about that now, which
Yeah,
is as
you're
it should be,
right.
you're allowed a
Yeah,
sick
you're
day for
right.
goodness sake.
Yeah.
Then things that I get really het up about, like school food,
Oh,
prison food,
yes,
hospital food.
yes.
I mean, honestly,
I
the
know.
hospital food should be the best food in the country
I know.
because they are the people
Well,
that
all
need the
our
best
public
food.
institutions should
Yeah.
be, they should be the mentor bit of how to eat well, not the
I mean,
how
you
to eat
should go into
terribly.
hospital and you
Yeah.
should come home and you should say,
Oh, I've learned so much about what's healthy.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And instead you
Oh,
get a piece of white toast and,
yeah.
oh, it's awful.
Cornflakes.
But it is
Yeah.
happening in some areas. Obviously in Japan, we know they've got great food provision in their schools,
Yeah, and
which
it makes
they're
a
obviously
huge
taking it
difference.
seriously and
Yeah.
investing in their children.
Yeah.
And they obviously help to, make sure their children walk or cycle safely to school. Now,
Yeah.
in our area where we are, it is so urbanized that I wouldn't feel safe
No, there
in
you
some
go.
instances
Yeah.
letting my children
Well, you
walk.
would if they decreased the cars on the road and you had, schemes where they all rode together. I've seen it done.
Like a
So they
school
have like
bus
a,
cycle.
yeah, like
Yeah.
they pick up the kids on their cycles and they all cycle down a road together. It looks fantastic. And you
Yeah, I
just
mean, that
think
would
the
be
kids love
amazing.
it as well.
Yeah,
Ah.
yeah. And then you've got other things just like making it easier for parents to
Mm,
be with their children.
yes.
Flexible working, better
And
parental
having
leave. I mean,
the ability to make meals and things, because of course that's part of flexible parenting. I mean,
yeah,
if you're
yeah.
both absolutely exhausted, it's not surprising that kids get a lot of ultra processed foods.
Well, of course not. And also, we it harks back to the fact that we weren't really taught how to, you know, to make food. A lot of
Mm,
us. I mean, I was
mm,
very fortunate that I had a great
mm.
role model in my mother
Yeah,
who
unless
taught
you
me
had
well.
a mother who cooked, it was,
Yeah, but
yeah,
it's not always the case. So
no,
I do think that the institutions do need to take some responsibility
yeah,
for the health of the
I
nation,
do.
and particularly in our nation, because we do have a public health service, and it is stretched beyond its capabilities, and it has
Absolutely,
been for decades.
absolutely.
And actually, if we really are serious about keeping that for our population, which I think we should, because I love the NHS, as you know,
Yes, yeah.
then we have to make it easier in other ways for people to live better.
You
Hmm.
know, it's really difficult to do things if you don't have a national
Mm.
health
I
service. So
mean,
in many ways, we would be absolutely mad to jeopardize our health
of
service,
course.
which is sort of what we're doing. And then you
Yeah.
think even bigger, what about tax breaks to encourage grandparents to live closer to their families? Because in this country, a lot of us have moved away from our primary sort of families, and
Mm.
then
Mm.
you miss out on the wealth of different
Yeah.
generations in
Oh, I would be
families.
lost without the grandparents. I really would.
There you
They're
go.
so
So you're
helpful.
lucky.
We're so fortunate to live close to both sets, and they both help in enormously. And I think,
Mm.
we chose to stay here for that
Partly
reason
for
too.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
that's exactly right, but imagine if they gave you a tax break to do it.
oh, it'd be
Or
amazing. I
yeah, I
mean,
just think it's doable,
it
you
is
know?
doable.
Yeah.
These are the kind of things that are doable, and I think it may be sort of what they call blue sky thinking or whatever they
Oh,
want to
that
say, but
awful
ultimately
term, yes.
it's awful, isn't it? Yeah. But and ultimately,
Yeah.
why are we not doing this? Why do we
Why are
care
we
so
not?
much about lining the pockets of billionaires and giving
Yeah.
them tax breaks,
Yeah.
but we don't care about the health of the people that make this country run? I do not understand that.
And,
Gonna go and
being
get my
a
placard out
very
now.
new grandparent myself, I
Yes, you
really
are.
think now about how cohesive we could be as a family and how we could help each other. And it works
Mm,
both ways, of course, because it also
mm,
gives grandparents, a valued position in
yeah.
families if they can
Mm,
be useful and helpful. It's not all one-way traffic. So
mm.
anyway, blue sky thinking and all that. I haven't heard that for a while.
I think
You
that
know.
was from that chap. Did you ever watch that documentary on The Little Chef?
No.
With Heston Blumenthal, he was brought in as the chef to revitalise Little Chef's fortunes,
Oh
and the
no.
management consultant or the manager guy who was in
Yes.
charge,
Oh
I think
God.
he said that about 52
Yeah.
times in the first episode. It was
It
awful.
comes from business management, and I think we have met it ourselves before, if I remember correctly, but we're not going to go there. But it always does make me smile when I hear it.
We may not
Anyway,
divulge our secrets publicly, Marianne.
no, let's not talk about that.
Okay.
Anyway, that's a little bit about environments and how important they are, and how just being aware that the environment is that important when you're designing healthy lifestyles. It's
Yeah.
worth thinking about. And,
I think if you're listening to this, it's worth sitting down with a piece of paper and thinking,
mm,
okay, what is it that I like about my
mm,
environment? And what is it that's not doing me any favours? And
yes.
how could I
How
make
could
a
I
small
improve
change to
it?
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I find a way to walk my kids to school or to walk 3 times a week, or
Hmm.
what are the things that are even possible,
Mm,
and how
mm.
do I mean, even small things, we suggest you, I don't know, walk the last 20 minutes or on your way to work,
Yeah.
or you run up the stairs at work, all these little things,
They
but
do
you
add
have
up.
to find a way, yeah, to
Mm.
make it work for you.
Yep. Cool.
Come
Right.
and join us at Seren Health Coaching, and come and have a look at our Kickstart program. It really is designed to get you thinking
Mm.
about where you are and where you're going.
Absolutely. Cool stuff. Nice
Yeah.
to chat, Marianne.
Yes. See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye
Bye.
for now.